Yeah, okay, time to live free. Plenty goals I'm achieving. Some real life topics and talking financial freedom. Mindset, soul and love, everything in between. This is Freedom Podcast. Tune in, live free. Hey, got my mindset right and I got the drive. Planning one day, no more job, no more 9 to 5. Love money, mind. Love money, mind. This is Freedom. Tune in, cause it's going down. Woo!
Hi, this is Anna and welcome to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. In this episode, I interview Lori and Nola. Lori and Nola are the founders of the Sticky Brand Lab and they have their own podcast, which is really cool. You've got to go and check them out. Lori describes herself as a multi-hyphenated, multi-faceted individual who believes each of us is even if we don't always think of ourselves that way. And just as with most of us, the whole of who she is as a compilation of her life, career, and personal experiences. She credits all of those experiences for guiding her to where she is today. They both create multiple income streams. They help brands launch themselves online. Really, really cool pair. I love them to bits, and I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. Hey, it's so good to have you both on the show. Welcome, Lori and Nola.
Thanks. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
So it's great because I know I've been on your podcast a couple of times now. So it's great for you to be on Your Freedom Podcast. And I often talk about my 3 pillars: freedom in love, which is really about self-care and self-love rather than romantic relationships. Freedom in money, which I know you guys are focusing a lot on with helping other women. And also freedom in mind, which kind of encompasses mindset. The word mindset doesn't do it justice, does it? You know, mind is a lot deeper than mindset. And the reason I talk about these 3 pillars is it's the 3 things that have given me equilibrium in my life, really. So when I was, struggling financially, that the seesaw balance was out of kilter, and when I wasn't looking after myself and my self-care, that was out of kilter. And of course, mindset just sort of encompasses absolutely everything that we do. And it's not really about being positive 100% of the time, because I think it's so unrealistic. We all have down days or bad days or things that, don't really flow, but it's about being able to turn our kind of bad days into good, or being able to see the positive, and focus on a lot of gratitude, which has helped me. So we also share a lot of stories on this podcast, because I think everybody's had a challenge, whether it be a challenge in setting up their business or a more traumatic challenge, and I think it's really interesting how people have created what they're doing online, because that inspires the listeners to hear exactly your sort of maybe trial and tribulations, but how you're sort of doing the do right now. So I know that the Sticky Brand Lab and the Sticky Brand podcast is a big focus of you two. And I just wanted to open up and for you to share about how this all started, really.
That's so such a great story, because I think part of how it started with Nola and myself, and then what it became, kind of that personal story, kind of morphed into it. But Nola and I were friends, and we were meeting initially we met for lunch, and then we started meeting for dinner. We just really were connecting. Actually, I should back that up. I saw the connection between Nola and myself. I don't know that Nola necessarily saw the connection when we first met, because later we talked about it. So I feel like I was the bad date. I was enamored with her before she was enamored with me.
No, that is not true. So our first date was actually a group lunch that had revolved around another organization, Conscious Capitalism and the Florida chapter. And we all met. I think most of us had met for the first time. There was one other person I had met once, and I think we were the ones that maybe organized it. Well, anyway, the conversation happened. I remember looking at Lori and going, I like the way she thinks. I would listen to her think through something in a different route than I would normally have. It was just fascinating watching her trail through a conversation. And so later I did say, you have a unique way of thinking. You think, what did I say? You think, what did I said? I described it and you said, well, actually it's web thinking. I had come up with a different term and you was like, actually it's considered web thinking, but I had said something like, you think in 3D. I said, you think in 3D. She says, well, actually it's called web thinking. I'm like, okay, there, she's familiar with the way she thinks. And, but then later on, yes, we wanted to continue talking about how we might be able to collaborate in this, in this organization or this initiative. And eventually we forgot even about the initiative and we just liked having our dinners and chit chatting, and it was always about business. Yeah.
And it was in that the similarities came out, and then the idea for a podcast happened. And we started to meet to discuss this podcast idea. And in the course of that, I got diagnosed with cancer. So we were both in Florida, and in order to get treatment, I needed to go to Texas. So everything happened very quickly. And in what happened with the podcast for me personally is that connection with Nola, because I had moved, we were doing it digitally, and we were planning it out. It became kind of a lifeline. I mean, she watched me go through the worst part of treatment. And when you're going through, I was going through radiation and oral chemo, and then surgery, and then surgery, and then recovery. And I couldn't always focus. And sometimes it was really hard. The worst part, I had no energy left to do it. But she would meet with me. And
no, you would meet with me. You insisted on meeting. I was blown away. It's like, no, I'm good. It's like, this is the one thing you held on to. You insisted on meeting. And I hey, what can I do? It was. One time you had just come out from chemo and you said, you know what, I'm really exhausted. I don't know how much I can stay awake. And you literally fell asleep in mid-sentence.
I didn't even remember that.
I think Josh helped say goodbye.
I bet though that you meeting and keeping that connection, like you said, just kind of took that focus away from, the trauma really that you were going through with the cancer. Because I can relate to that with, not that, our stories are ever the same. We all have individual stories, but what I can relate to is that when I was going through a lot of my personal drama with domestic abuse and stuff, I remember, do you remember the old little dongles that we used to have for 4G that you'd stick in your laptop?
Oh, yes.
It doesn't exist anymore. I remember going in the car and having calls with clients and different things to really, a lot of people would have just cancelled. But it was giving me that positive focus somewhere else that I wanted.
You weren't dwelling on your problem.
Like a diver, isn't it? In a way, it's like a diver to keep you going with something. I feel like my business sort of saved me, really.
That's awesome.
Well, the one thing that I said going through that is that I had a medical team to focus on my illness. I could focus on my wellness. It was the only thing I had choice in. I could choose to get up. I could choose to get ready. I could choose, as Nola had said, I could choose to meet and focus on something that opened up possibilities, that was a future. It was a lifeline. Nola and the idea of the podcast morphed into something much greater than I had anticipated when we initially started. And I think it was in that focus of really valuing why we wanted to help women, particularly diversify their career and have multiple streams of income. And so for us, Sticky Brand Lab podcast really became about helping give a foundation to how do you start a business? How do you launch it? How do you do a website? How do you do branding? How do you do marketing? Just the foundational pieces to getting started that you could do yourself, or you could do at a very low cost, or you could do for free, that would help you understand putting a business based on your idea, your creativity, your knowledge, your expertise together. That's where that kind of unfolded from.
Now, can I tell you how that unfolded? So why that specifically? So before all this unexpected drama, during those dinners, we are like a couple of entrepreneurial geeks. So I don't know about Lori, but she is the only one that I could geek out on business concepts with. We would get together, and the thing is, we have each freelance and consulted, and we've each had clients or our own personal companies, and we like to get together and compare notes and talk about, man, this one person, I can't believe they did this. If they only knew how unprofessional that looked. I mean, it's such basic knowledge, but unless you've been exposed to that, who knew? For example, I'm just going to bring one example. For example, people write their marketing materials or their website, and it's all about themselves. It doesn't talk about how it can help you, it's just like, I'm all that, so therefore you should hire me. And it's like basic, but you don't know that unless you've been given that information. And we kept seeing those kinds of examples, even done by professionals. People would pay somebody to do writing or design or something, and then we'd see, and we'd go, you mean you paid money for this? And it might have been low pay, or they might have done it themselves because they themselves had a marketing degree, but they just needed a little bit more information. So we decided, we really know what we're talking about. Maybe we should do something with this. So,
yes. And we also liked eating. So the two combined, we would go out to eat. We would have these great meals. We would take pictures of them. I'd post them on review sites, and we would geek out on topics that we love to talk about.
I do think, though, that you two are you're definitely very unique. And because I remember when we first had our first call, we'd been kind of recommended to connect by a mutual friend of us, Lori, and just the energy that when I came off that first call between both of us, I was just like on a bit of a high, because sometimes don't get me wrong, I've met other people and I had good connections, but there was just this, I can't even really put it into words. It was just, you two have both got this unique relationship. It is a bit like a yin and yang, you've got different skill sets, but together it really works. And also just really high levels of integrity. I think that's we haven't known each other for that long, but it just really you both really come across very authentic. I know we use authentic as a word quite frequently, but true, authentic, relationship and just people. So cool. We're just going to get that in, because we've had several calls about how there could be things that we can do, and we've got plans in place, which is really exciting. But you don't meet people every day like you two, and I think what you've got is really, really unique. And I think it's lovely with your story, Lori, that life, there's going to be lots of different challenges around the corner, aren't there? We don't know what's going to come in our lives, but it's having something where, you mentioned about what you want to do for women. I've seen or listened to lots of podcasts where it's, when we create our why, it's something that's bigger than ourselves. And I think that's maybe our synergy about helping women.
Yes.
With financial freedom and things like that. And I know we've talked a lot about the whole career diversification, which I know you two are really focused on. I just wanted to dive into that a little bit more for people who are listening, because I think a lot of the time we talk about creating an online business and people think, well, they have to stop their job and then jump off the edge of the cliff and create their online business. And because of everything we see online and social media, that they're going to be, a 6-figure business owner within 30 days. And there's that impression that we see, online. So tell us a bit about how you can help people with that whole career diversification.
Yeah, do you want us to start on that, Nola?
So career diversification, something that we latched onto in the course of producing a podcast was work done back in the 80s by a guy called Charles Handy. I believe he was originally an oil executive for like Shell Oil Corporation, but he was very visionary. And way back then, he could foresee that instead of everybody working for their corporation and earning, all their lives, earning the watch, retiring, and, living on their pension and being basically at the mercy of the corporation. Now, this was the 80s and things were just starting to get a little shaky in the corporate sector. He envisioned and literally predicted that one day people would be taking ownership of their own careers, and they would be making choices about their own earning potential. They would develop their own skills so that they would have more opportunities. So that, and in doing so, they would be creating their own portfolio of ways to, what do you say, just diversify.
Multiple streams of income.
Yeah, multiple streams of income. And so that's exactly what we've been talking about. It just kind of put a framework around something we've already been talking about. And that is because, women have so many other dreams. I wouldn't say just women, but we can relate to women who do.
Right.
You have your full-time job or your full-time gig, but there's so much more that you can do. You have so many more interests. You could go in so many different directions. And there is a methodical way you can do that. There's ways you can test the waters. There are ways that you can do that in a passive versus active way, methods, in order to start getting that income stream coming in from different directions and having more choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think the diversification we thought of initially was part of that was because women often don't get the same advantages or career paths going into companies that their male counterparts do, just because for a variety of reasons. And there's still some very biased thinking about women in general. And yet, what ends up happening is it restricts their growth or their ability to climb in the corporate ladder. So having a diversified portfolio really says you can be more in charge of how your professional growth develops. If you want to learn how to do something and market yourself as an expertise and then come back to your company and say, I'm going to apply for this job, and actually I've created a whole business that has allowed me to work with this company or sell on this product or do whatever that diversified path looks like, it raises your level of thought leadership. It raises your financial stakes. It opens more opportunities for you. It really gives you a path. And one of the things, just to kind of talk about, Anna, a little bit how that moves with what you do for women, is oftentimes we don't do something out of our comfort zone because we don't know how. And we don't know where to go to find a trusted person to guide us in that. And so we end up not shining as brightly as we could, or we don't show all the facets of our diamond self that we could. We kind of just focus in this one area. And so we feel from our podcast that we're opening up this knowledge base, and we try to bring in experts, which is what brought you to our podcast, to talk about Etsy and to talk about Amazon and selling there, because you have that unique knowledge base. And we just wanted to help people find a good, solid resource like yourself in order to be able to learn that. Well, that's what we want to do when it comes to sharing marketing and branding and all the other foundational things that they would benefit you in having a diversified career portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for people who could be listening to this right now that think this sounds really interesting, and how, from a starting point, are a little bit confused, like what are some of the ways that women can diversify their career, like as regards to like side business or different multiple streams of income?
Personally, I think if you start with something that you're naturally interested in, and a good example here is Nola and I we shared a common connection over food. We loved eating it. I happen to like also making it. Well, either when you come to the US, we'll have to show you some of that, or when we go there, we'll have to see some of the great places that you like to eat. But if you have a unique interest, then you start to think about, well, what can I do with that unique interest that might open me up to more to opportunities to share my knowledge, my experience, or to develop a product or business in, right? Because you don't necessarily think that way. So if you liked baking, as an example, and you might do recipes, or you might have a niche because you used cooking to help you during an illness, or you might want to sell products that you recognized had a unique spin on it. So one of my favorites is, the spatulas that you use, well, they typically are very plain, but I recently saw somebody who developed that the solid color, the rubber part of it, they actually had vibrant colors, or they had messages on them. They were so cute. I wanted to buy some. So if that's a good example of taking a passion, looking for a different way of taking that interest and marketing it, and then of course doing the research that lets you know, hey, there's a market for your product.
Yeah.
One of the biggest reasons, like it's in the 80, I want to say it's 84% of the reason a business fails is because there's not an idea, there's not a market for it. So you really want to be able to do the research to make sure that the idea that you have is marketable.
You're talking my language, because this is everything you've just said is exactly what I talk to my students about as regards to, like physical products. And it's exactly the same with anything that you're doing online, isn't it? Whether it might be a service or just anything that you're marketing. I think it's, yes, there's some people that say, don't focus on your interest, focus on the research, the numbers, but I think
there's got to be an overlap there.
Yeah, I think we need to have both, because the reason I think we need to have both is that in every business there's challenges that we come up against. And I've seen it in like the Amazon world, where people have sold products that they have no interest in, and then they lose interest when there's a challenge. Whereas actually, if you're doing a physical product or marketing with something that you love, or you do have that interest in or expertise, when you have these road bumps and things that come your way, it keeps you going because you've got that vision, of where you want to go with it.
Yeah. And that way you don't look at failure as like a loss. You just view failure as a lesson learned. And because your passion is still there, you'll realize, okay, it didn't work that way. Let's analyze it and make a tweak. And if the market is there, then, even if it means that you've missed the market a little bit, the tweak might be, just adjust it a little bit this way. This is where people really want to know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes when we talk about interest, it doesn't have to be like this big hobby. Like when anybody asks me, what are your hobbies? My answer in my head is like, I've got no time for hobbies.
Exactly.
But we have lots of different interests, even if it's something you've purchased yourself, or maybe something for your family or your children, or you see other people, there's loads of different interests that we have when we think about it, I think.
Well, like I'd had an interest in travel and had a lot of experience in travel. And because of the transformative effects that certain types of travel can have on people, and I'd seen it, I took that interest and created a, transformational travel and retreat planning company as just a side business while I was doing other stuff. And then COVID happened. So that's there's that.
That's separate. But
it's
Nola
an example.
She's also a really good example of kind of having an interest and then thinking beyond that little bit. And I'm going to give you an example of hers, which is that whole creating jewelry and upcycle. Is that what it is? Or it's not recycle. When you take something and then make something new out of it. That's her interest in jewelry, right?
Yes. And yes. I was creating products and started channels for that. But, one thing that we have learned is, or at least I have learned, is you can have only so many active channels of income, but some just need to be passive, or you need to pick and choose. And but that is still an interest, and it's still there, and it still has a lot of opportunity. So that's a good example.
It is. And actually, I think.
Go on.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that sometimes we don't realize, because I think this is what you were trying to say, is if you have an interest in something, when it gets hard or when it gets to that lull, if your interest is there, if it still excites you personally, you'll work through the challenge.
Exactly.
If you don't have that underlying interest there, when you hit the roadblock, when you hit the wall and you're not sure what to do, you'll say, forget it.
Exactly.
Because you weren't following something that was exciting for you to begin with.
And I want to say that happened to me a couple of times, where I've always had some kind of a side gig going on, or a side business or freelance work. However, looking back, it was the times where I did it out of desperation, because I just had to find some escape from a really miserable work life, or day job, or I just desperately felt like I needed some more money, and I just put it out there because this is what I do best. I know I can get clients for this. And I didn't necessarily do it because it was my love. Exactly what happened is what you said. Exactly what you said is what happened is, okay, this is getting a lot harder than I expected. It's not worth it to me. I'm going to close this down because I don't have my heart in it, and especially if the original problem got solved and my day job situation improved, or the financial situation improved, that I didn't love what I was doing enough to keep it going for the sake of the love of being enmeshed in that interest, and it makes all the difference. I love what we talk about on our podcast. If we never pressed play, that would be great, because then we could talk for like an hour and a half.
Exactly. And also another thought that I've just thought for people who could be listening to this, who are thinking now about their interests and, oh yeah, I could, start a business on this topic, or, I like jewelry type of thing. Is it, in your opinion, is it better to be kind of like a jack of all trades, a master of none, or is it better to focus on a particular expertise that you have? What would you think?
Personally, I am more of a jack of all trade. And so, I know there are people who are specialized, and Noel might have a different opinion of this. I think there are pros and cons to both. I don't think there's a one right. What about you, Noel? Do you think that there's one right?
I think it depends on your own interests, because if you are a specialist of, master of one, if you are in a niche that is, let's say it's fast moving, that it changes all the time. If you're in a niche and you keep updated and you can be a specialist in that niche, let's say, for example, SEO, search engine optimization, that's something that's constantly changing, constantly evolving. And people are always wanting to know, business owners and website developers constantly need to know what is the latest, update, what's happening. If you can be that go-to person with that expertise, you can write your own ticket, as long as that's something you love to do. And some people can just be really focused, and they love to find out what's going on. And If that's when being a, master of one, a specialist, really is conducive. But if you think you're going to get bored out of your mind just focusing on that one thing, as a generalist, so for example, SEO is a niche within the marketing field. If you were to be a generalist, then you would, again, still need to be pretty much in tune, keep your thumb on the pulse of the marketing industry. So we're just saying, using marketing as an example, on the industry, and, be able to talk about, what's going on and speak in general terms about what can be applied to all the niches. And then you have a little bit more flexibility to change your focus based on your level of interest. So at one point, you may be able to write an article or do some speaking or do some consulting on the latest research that's come out on SEO. And another day, you might be able to talk to, nonprofit leaders about the best way to craft appeals for the best, rate of return. And so if you like that, if you thrive on that, I think that's the answer.
Yeah. I will say two things though. One is, if you focus in a niche, a specialist, oftentimes because of your specialty, you can demand more money because you bring that expertise that's very narrow. So that's something to think about. The other is a kind of a warning. If you are a generalist, one of the downsides to that is you may try to do too much, too many things at the same time. And if you're going to be successful, pick a starting point, pick a single lane, learn it, do it well, think one product, one person, one solution, that whole thing. And then when that is taking off, then open yourself up to something else. Don't try to do too many things at the same time. Those are my two caveats.
That's a good point.
You've took my next question away, because I know when I was first online, I think I was laying myself too thin over lots of different things. Mm-hmm. And I think people were confused what I did as well.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
When I did then really just focus on one area, it became a lot simpler for me, and it became a lot clearer to my audience, I think. Yeah. But like you say, like I focused on Amazon for a long time, and now I've got Etsy, and also been talking about books and print on demand. So once you do become a master of one, you can then start adding other things.
And those are all related
as well.
Yeah,
they are all related. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you're being able to draw on your expertise in one lane and just widen that lane a little bit more and a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a saying, if you try to speak to everyone or try to be everything to everyone, you are nothing to no one. Because the person on the other end can't figure out if you're talking to them or not.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know we kind of touched on mindset and looking after yourself, and obviously with your sort of personal journey, you went through, a difficult time. But for people who might decide they're going to come on this journey of, solopreneur, entrepreneurship online, I think sometimes it is a bit of a lonely place. It's great when we can connect with other like-minded ladies online like yourself. It's been great, our connection, but anything, again, we get really motivated at the beginning of our journey, and then when things get a bit more challenging or we don't get results straight away, I've seen it when people create YouTube channels and then they put like 4 or 5 videos and then they're not doing any more, because we kind of want that instant success, don't we? And it takes a period of time for us to really start getting those outcomes. What advice would you give people listening to this about kind of keeping yourself sane when you're trying to do something online?
I think one of the things that Nola and I learned from interviewing people who started a side business that then later became their full-time business is they gave us a real good perspective of it taking a couple years before they really could see that they needed to make a choice. When they first got started, they were working a full-time job and starting something new. So part of that is, from my standpoint, is getting a realistic understanding. No matter if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Don't think that you're going to be the exception to the rule. Think you're going to be along following that same rule. If it takes a couple years, it's likely going to take a couple years for you. If it turns out not to, then you're the unicorn. But don't think that there are unicorns and that we're all unicorns. We're all special. We all bring a unique perspective, but it takes a while to launch that, which is why self-care becomes really, really important. As a matter of fact, Nola and I just recorded an episode on the idea of boredom and creativity, that whole need to take care of yourself, to nurture relationships, to nurture downtime, because it opens up and fuels that creative outlet, those creative ideas that are just waiting inside, but you're so busy, you're not tapping into them. So for me, personally, that quieting, I have to do meditation. I had done it a long time ago, then I didn't do it for a while, and I've been doing it for the last couple years, just about every day, not too long, but every day, and it starts my day. So for me, that idea of having an outlet is important. Having a creative outlet, also exercise, is part of my health and wellness. It was part of my getting back from cancer, and it is maintained because there are a lot of research on how creativity and exercise kind of go hand in hand. So there's things that I try to do, and gratitude are probably the three things that I try to do on a regular basis that I think help with that mindset and help me to remember I'm much smaller in the grand scheme of things than my ego thinks I am. My ego thinks I'm the center of the universe. My mindset reminds me that I'm just a part of it. I'm a contributor to the energy that's out there, and I can either be a positive contributor or a negative contributor, and I choose the positive.
Yeah, I love that.
And for me, maintaining sanity while juggling these side endeavors and Sticky Brand Lab and a full-time job, it can get kind of crazy. It helped. I have the most sanity when I have enough sleep.
Yeah, sleep.
I don't know, that's part of self-care,
Yes.
but literally there is this, I put on my phone an app that puts into sleep mode, which means it takes the colors off, all of that blue light. It automatically puts my phone on do not disturb. And so I don't get any pings if a text comes in the middle of the night. And then I set it to a very pleasant alarm in the morning. So I'm not like jolted in the morning. I just pleasantly awaken. So sleep is so important, but also just for having a level of grace toward myself, that it's not going to be perfect. Everything's not going to be perfect. I'm only one person, and I'm doing the best I can. And we know that, in fact, we have the saying, embrace the mess, the messy.
Say yes to the yes.
Say yes to the mess. Thank you.
Yes.
In fact, we do have a podcast on that. I think it was our 18th, and we're now in the 80s, but early on, we had a whole podcast on say yes to the mess, because if you have a level of perfection, it's just going to create more stress for you, and it can even delay you just getting out there and doing something. And it's when you get out there and start finding out what happened, you've I don't know, kind of had a educated guess, but you're still throwing mud on the wall, and now you're kind of seeing what that pattern looks like, and now you're able to make those tweaks, at least in how you're presenting your product or your service. But the whole point being, give yourself a measure of grace. Don't expect perfection in the beginning, and just forgive yourself if it doesn't work out right away, and move on, because having that level of perfection as your standard is just going to take some of the fun out of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think striving for perfection is in a way worse than procrastination in a way. They both delay us actually getting our stuff done. And I often say to my students, if it's 70-80% ready, just go for it, because you can tweak it over time. Because that perfection, like you say, the perfection thing, just delays us getting things out there, So it's been great listening to you. There's always so much synergy every time we talk. I love it.
Yeah.
And for people listening, you'll look in the show notes, you'll be able to see Lori and Nola's contact details and links to their wonderful podcast. So just do reach out. I don't know if there's anything that you want to mention as regards to how you can help women specifically.
Go for it, Lori.
Oh, great. I think we help in a variety of ways. One of the things that you talked about, and I just want to piggyback off of that, is getting started is really hard. And we tend to want to put our best self forward, and we associate how well what we produce is to our personal ego. And that's not the same. When you're creating a business, especially a business that you're interested in, a business that gets you excited and energizes you, it's okay that it's not perfect to begin with. That's how we help women get started. We support sometimes it's about, how do you pick the one idea to get going with, and then how do you implement it? That's strictly where we focus on, either guiding that. So we use an Ask Muse, or we have some consulting that we do. We partner with brilliant ladies like yourself to try and bring that synergy together, so people get a whole picture, like they get the subject matter expertise that comes with your industry and the content and marketing and stuff that we bring to the table. So we help in a variety of ways, but the biggest obstacle is our own self to doing the thing that can take us to that next level. So I think we specifically want to encourage and support that whole idea of yes to the mess, but mostly put yourself out there, because the beauty that'll evolve from moving forward, nobody can do it the way that you do it. And even if you get started and you'll look back in 2 years and you'll say, I can't believe that was my first whatever, because now I have all this great stuff. I know how to do it. It's quick. It happens. People love it. I'm connecting with people. I know the things that I didn't know when I got started. But you don't do that until you move forward. And so I think for us, it's about, we believe you can do it. So here's how you get started.
Yeah, I love that. And I think also, I didn't mention that before about going to check your podcast, but the Ask Muse, I was listening to some of those interviews. They are so much value. For people that can relate to some of the questions that people are asking, it can really help you. It's like kind of mini mastermind for questions. So if you are listening to this and you have got lots of questions that are going through your mind, go and check out. I'll put the link for that as well, for the Ask Muse episodes that you did, because they're huge value that you've got on there. So it's been great listening to you, and I know that we could, from previous conversation, we could talk for another hour.
We really could.
Topics.
Can we please?
And it's just been great to actually get you on the show, so thank you ever so much for coming on. But before we round up, I always ask everybody on the show one question, and because it's the Freedom Podcast, and it's going to mean different things to both of you, actually. I'm sure there'll be some synergy, but what does freedom mean to both of you?
Go ahead, Nola.
No, we have the same answer.
We do. We do, because it's on our website. So
we collaborated. It was a long conversation. It was days of putting it together.
I can imagine with you guys.
So I'll read it if you don't mind. It's on unless you have something else to add. But our collaborative meaning of freedom is empowering women to attain personal and professional satisfaction, creative autonomy, and financial independence through entrepreneurship.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. It's been absolutely awesome getting you on the show. I love connecting with you guys. I can't wait for what we create in the future as well. It's been great having you on the show. And for people listening, do go and check out all the links that you can see in the show comments. If you're listening on you could be listening on iTunes, or you could be watching us on YouTube, but go and check out the comments and go and check out the Sticky Brand podcast and the Muse. and reach out to Lori and Nola for their support, because I know that they are so focused on empowering other women, and it's just lovely to have this connection. So thank you, both of you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to combine our energies with you because we think you're amazing as well. It's like a mutual admiration society.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, great. It's been great to have you on the show. Thanks for listening to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and subscribe on my YouTube channel. And if you want to get more freedom in your life, then come and join Your Freedom Project Facebook group, which the link is below in the comments section. And I am giving you a copy of my visualization manifesting book. So manifest more freedom in your life and live the life of your dreams.
Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey.